So I got something super cool for you on Afternoon Tales today. You know that thing where adults are always like, oh, teen relationships aren't real or whatever? Well, I was thinking about that the other day and, I'm really curious about your take on this, Abby. Do you think adults kinda underestimate how meaningful teen relationships can actually be?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. This is actually something I feel super passionate about. Adults totally dismiss teen relationships as just these fleeting little crushes that don't matter in the grand scheme of things. But here's the thing. These relationships can be incredibly meaningful, and they teach teenagers so much about themselves. Like, they're learning about love. They're developing self-awareness. They're figuring out how to communicate with another person on a deeper level. Whether these relationships last or not isn't really the point. You know what I mean? The impact they have is real.
That's, that's really interesting. I never thought about it that way. So you're saying even if teen relationships don't last forever, they still have value? Because I feel like there's this idea out there that only relationships that end in marriage or something are real love.
Right. And that's such a narrow way of looking at love, don't you think? This whole concept of real love is totally subjective. Some people are stuck in this mindset that only relationships that lead to marriage count as real love. But that's just not true. A broader perspective recognizes that emotional connections at any age can be valuable and meaningful. Teen love can absolutely be real love, even if it doesn't last forever. The feelings are authentic in that moment, and that's what matters.
I'm curious though, do you think teens sometimes confuse love with lust? Because that seems like a common thing that happens.
Oh, 100. But honestly, adults do that too. It's definitely common for teens to confuse love with lust. Lust is primarily driven by physical attraction. You know, those intense feelings that make your heart race when you see someone you're attracted to. Love, on the other hand, is more rooted in emotional connection. It's about caring deeply for another person's well-being, not just wanting to be with them physically. Learning to distinguish between these two feelings is actually a really important part of emotional growth. And teen relationships provide this perfect, testing ground for figuring this stuff out. Even if they make mistakes along the way, which we all do, they're developing crucial emotional intelligence that will help them navigate relationships for the rest of their lives.
That makes a lot of sense. But statistically speaking, teen relationships don't last very long, right? Does that affect their value?
You're right about the statistics. Most teen relationships last somewhere between 6 months to a year. But here's the thing. Duration isn't the only measure of worth, right? These relationships still offer so much joy and personal growth during the time they exist. And honestly, some teen relationships do stand the test of time. We all know that couple who met in high school and are still together decades later. But even if a relationship doesn't last forever, that doesn't mean it wasn't real or meaningful. Think about it. We don't dismiss friendships just because they don't last forever, do we? Every relationship teaches us something valuable, and teen relationships are no exception to that rule.
So what would you say makes for a healthy teen relationship then? What should teens focus on to make sure they're having positive experiences?
That's such a great question. For more successful and healthy teen relationships, there are definitely some key things to focus on. First and foremost, prioritizing self-discovery and authenticity is super important. Teens are still figuring out who they are, and the best relationships support that journey rather than hindering it. Another big one is avoiding losing your identity in the relationship. This happens so often. You start dating someone and suddenly your whole world revolves around them. But maintaining your own interests, friendships, and goals is crucial, you know? Teens should also be considering their personal goals, especially after high school. If you're planning to attend college across the country, that's something to be honest about. It doesn't mean you can't be in a relationship, but it does mean having realistic expectations.
Those are great points. Anything else you think is important for teens to keep in mind?
Absolutely. Maintaining a balanced social life outside the relationship is so important. Your friends and family were there before the relationship, and they'll be there after if it ends. Don't neglect those connections. And finally, seeking support from trusted adults or through therapy can be incredibly helpful. Having someone objective to talk to about relationship challenges can provide valuable perspective. Adults who take teen relationships seriously rather than dismissing them can offer guidance without judgment. The bottom line is that teen relationships are a meaningful part of growing up. With the right mindset and support, they can contribute so positively to emotional development and future relationship skills. They're like training wheels for adult relationships, and that's nothing to scoff at.
I've never thought about it that way, but it makes so much sense. It sounds like we should really be taking teen relationships more seriously and supporting young people through these experiences rather than dismissing them.
Exactly. Instead of dismissing teen relationships as puppy love or whatever, we should recognize them as valuable learning experiences. The emotions are real, the lessons are real, and the impact is real. And honestly, if adults were more supportive and took these relationships more seriously, teens might develop healthier relationship patterns earlier in life, which could only benefit them in the long run.
Well, this has been really eye-opening. Thank you for sharing all of this insight, Abby. I think our listeners will have a lot to think about when it comes to how they view teen relationships, whether they're teenagers themselves or adults in a teen's life.
My pleasure. It's a topic I feel really strongly about. I hope our conversation helps people see teen relationships in a new light. They're not just these trivial, fleeting things. They're meaningful chapters in young people's lives that deserve respect and support. And if you're a teenager listening to this, just know that your feelings are valid, and the relationships you form now, even if they don't last forever, are helping shape who you'll become.
And that's all for today's episode of Afternoon Tales. Join us next time when we dive into another fascinating topic. Until then, keep the conversations going.
See you next time, everyone. And remember, every relationship teaches us something valuable. No matter how old we are, thanks for listening to Afternoon Tales.